Hello everybody, this is Andy. I am here in Matthew chapter 21. Matthew chapter 21 is a humongous chapter. I don't even know how I'm gonna do it. But it starts off with what's called the triumphal entry. Is that blurry? Let me clean you off a little bit there, internet. There we go. Yeah. Triumphal entry. So Jesus starts off by coming in to Jerusalem. I have to believe that the name triumphal entry must be ironic for a couple reasons. One is he's coming in on a donkey. And, you know, it should be said that when Pilate would leave Jerusalem, you know, Pilate was the leader of, you know, the Roman leader who was in charge of, you know, he was the governor. And when he would come back to kind of show his force and his power, they would have this like procession for him where he would be coming in on a horse, and the people would like beat their shields as he was coming in to kind of show that these people were dominated by the Roman Empire. So Jesus comes in and they kind of do something very similar, recognizing that he's, you know, someone they're excited to see. And, you know, maybe even recognizing him as a ruler. But he's coming in on a donkey, not a big horse. And I have to believe that the people that saw him were probably thinking, why is he riding a donkey? You know, and a donkey was a symbol of coming in peace. And it was even prophesied more than once that the Messiah would come in riding on a donkey. There is some confusion about this part because I have a friend named Trevor, and he took a Bible class one time, and he said that his professor was like, oh, this mythical thing is happening because he's riding on a donkey and on a colt. And, you know, this was supposed to be some example of how the Bible is ridiculous or something like that. This Bible professor, someone who actually has a degree, is really going out of his way to to discredit the Bible. But it's well known that the best way to keep a donkey from freaking out is to have its babies kind of tied to their back. So if people are yelling Hosanna to Jesus as he's coming in, you know, it might freak out the donkey. So you have a donkey, and then tied to the donkey, following behind, is its colt. So that's what's going on. Nothing ridiculous. So Jesus comes in, and he's, you know, having people saying Hosanna to him, and the Pharisees kind of start freaking out. And Jesus goes in, and they only mention it in the book of Matthew. They mention it much more in Matthew or Mark and Luke, where Jesus goes in and he cleanses the temple. That's like, he turns over the tables and he tells everybody, look, this is not what the temple is for. It's not for selling goods. You know, there was a lot of, you know, not good stuff happening in the temple. And so Jesus turns over the tables of the people selling sacrifices and the money changers. And he says, this is supposed to be a house of prayer, and you've turned it into a den of thieves. So I think something, I will talk about this because it has always been mysterious to me, and that is the cursing of the fig tree. A couple months ago, I was just with my wife, and I was just sitting, and I went over the computer, and I just had to like look it up, and I started reading a bunch of articles out of the blue. I don't even know what it was. It was just like, I have to get to the bottom of this cursing of the fig tree. Jesus walks up to a fig tree, and it said I don't know if it says it in this one or if it's a different gospel, but it says that it wasn't time for figs. He saw leaves, but he didn't see any figs. And what this means is the fig tree is kind of a weird tree where before the leaves come in, the figs will come in. The fruit comes before the leaves. And so he's going up to this tree, and it said it wasn't the season for figs. That means that the figs weren't ripe yet, but it means he still could have eaten them. So Jesus goes up to the tree, sees leaves and no figs, which means that nobody else came and got them because it wasn't in season yet. And the leaves were already there, which means that the figs should have already been at least starting to come in. But he looks and he sees a fruitless tree, and he looks at the tree and says, "May you never bear fruit again." And that tree withered up and died. And, you know, his disciples are kind of surprised because Jesus has done a lot of miracles before, but he's never killed anything. he's never had, you know, produced or showed judgment on something. And it's not 100% clear exactly what this is to symbolize, but most people think it's the temple. He just cleansed the temple, and the temple is really a symbol of you know, the nation of Israel. So it could be, you know, the temple itself. It could be, you know, the kind of like the traditional Jewish religion. It could be, you know, it could be many things. But, and then the rest of the chapter kind of talks about what it is, because he's, you know, he says, you know, this is, may you never bear fruit again. And then it starts in a conversation that he has with the Pharisees. And they ask him, by what authority do you do your miracles? And he says, you know, I'll tell you. But first you have to answer this question. And by what authority did John do his, you know, I don't know if he was doing miracles. By what authority was John speaking? You know, where was John's power coming from? And they kind of thought, I don't know exactly if they said this out loud, but they were saying, you know, if we say this, then Jesus will say that. And if you say that, then Jesus will say this. And so they came back and they said, we don't know. And he's like, oh, you don't know? Well, then neither will I tell you where I get my authority from. And it's clear he's saying, but in the same way that John got his authority, I get my authority, only more so. So then Jesus says, he tells two parables. I won't get into both of them in depth, but I will talk about the last one real quick. He says, let's say there's this farmer. He's not a farmer, he's like a landowner. And he makes this vineyard, and he sets it all up, and it's gonna be a very fruitful vineyard. And then he puts some people in place there to take care of the land, and then he goes to another place. So when it's time for the harvest, he sends some people over there to get, I don't know if it's the money from it or if it's the fruit itself, but the people who he put in charge of it, they say no. And they beat up one of the guys, and he sends another guy, and they stone him, and then they bring another guy and they kill him. And then finally the landowner is like, I'm sick of this, I'm gonna send my son, they'll respect him. Now in the story, the son is supposed to be a symbol of Jesus, and he says, and then they say, let's kill the son, and then we'll have the inheritance will come to us. And then Jesus says, what do you think that this is? What do you think that this landowner is going to do to these people? And it was clear to them that that Jesus was talking about them, that they are the people put in charge of the land, and that the land is basically the temple. And then it really does kind of shed a light on what he was talking about with the fig tree, you know, because they weren't producing any fruit. And here he's saying these people are not giving the master the fruit. So it's showing that the Pharisees are not being fruitful, and that he is going to give basically his mission, you know, he's going to give what he's doing in the world over to the Gentiles. So this was a very long chapter, and I feel like I wasn't able to go nearly in depth in any of these parts as I would have liked to have, but yeah, that's Matthew chapter 21. All right, bye.